Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship Your holy name. You're rich in love and you're slow to anger. Your name is great and your heart is kind. For all Your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship Your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come, still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're really happy to have you with us. And to my right, beside Marty, is Cheryl Betta Kiefer, who is the Executive Director of Bridges Cooperative Ministry. And beside me is Pastor Terry Nipple, who is the Senior Board Member for Bridges as well. So welcome to both of you. Really happy to have you with us. So we're going to begin with a little prayer, and then I'll turn all this over to Marty and let the fun begin with all this. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we ask your blessing upon us as we talk about not just the plight of the poor, but also the plight of our local poor. And everyone who was probably watching us, even as far as Altoona, realize the poverty that exists in downtown Johnstown, and how these people have done their part, and in many ways done the great part of really being able to help those people find their way into a whole new life. So bless us tonight. Bless Cheryl. Bless Terry. Bless us as we talk about these people that they love so very, very much. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. So thank you. Marty, glad to turn this over to you, and welcome, everybody.
Okay, so Bridges Cooperative Ministry and the Bridges to Success program, we'll get into details in depth, but I always like to start when we have a program with people that maybe our audience are not familiar with. You know, consider this like, I don't know if you're old enough, but you would remember What's My Line, the television program. And it would always start with, they would try to say something about them or what they did. So I think that would be, and we'll do ladies first, and we'll do younger first. We'll go younger to older, okay? We'll go down the line, and then he'll talk because he's the oldest at the table.
But they all know who I am, so I don't have to listen to you.
Just tell me your story. Not this, but I mean how you got to where you are.
Okay. Well, I was with New Day Incorporated actually for 30 years in this area as the director of counseling for most of that time. And really, you know, we worked with all sorts of people down at New Day in the counseling program, but obviously predominantly the people that come in are more under-resourced. And so I've always had a heart for trying to serve and help empower people who are marginalized. And it was a natural progression for me in my, I think I was just done with the counseling portion, but counseling really kind of dictates or helps form my idea of how we even do this ministry. Because this is a ministry of process to help people move and change in their lives. It's not a quick fix, not a quick fix at all. And so I have a master's in social work, and I've always been a social worker at heart, even though I did the counseling realm for a long time. Yeah, so it was just it was a good step to take my experience at New Day, which I did a lot more than just the counseling program, did a lot of administrative things in the end there too, the last couple of years.
Let's go back before that, though. As a young person, how did you decide social work was what you wanted to do? We all have callings, some of which we ignore.
It was definitely my calling. Counseling and social work was definitely my calling. I became a Christian at the age of 12, and so I was very
what do you mean,
aware
Cheryl?
that God.
What do you mean by that? You sort of just blew right by that.
I became a Christian at the age of 12. Well, I was not raised in a church that really talked about faith that much. I was dropped off at Catholic Mass every week, most weeks, but it really didn't settle in until the age of 12, when some people shared the gospel in a way that made more sense. And actually, I continued to go to the Catholic Church for a number of years because that was kind of home to me. And then by the time I was in high school and getting ready to go to college, praying about and thinking about what am I supposed to do with my life, counseling was a very clear calling, and social work made a lot of sense to me because of the holistic approach that it takes. That it takes an approach that really sees the person in every aspect of their lives, and that really resonated with me. And there's an interesting story about how I came to that conclusion.
You can tell that story.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have time.
Okay, I was originally going to go into art,
Wait a minute. You were
Yeah.
going to go into art? And
Yes,
You got, okay.
yes.
Now
And-
we need to understand
and I-
how you got from there to where you are.
Well, I've always had a heart for people, and it's probably the main reason I ended up where I am. But I was on a trip to work on getting a scholarship at a particular college in Ohio, and had taken my portfolio and done all this stuff. But I had broken my foot, and so I was in a cast. And it was a arduous trip. I had to take a bus to get there. There was all sorts of things. My family actually was rather poor growing up, and so we really didn't have the resources. We didn't even have a car at that point. So on the bus ride back, I mean, it was an awful time. It was at Kent State University. But it was on the ride home. I was just broken. I was like, wow, this was so hard. Is this really where I'm supposed to be? And I believe, or I definitely heard God speak to me about what I really love. And so I love art. I will always be an artist and continue to work my art. But what I love was, what I knew at that time was what I loved was to be able to help people in some way. And so that changed the direction of where I was going, because everybody was telling me, "Oh, you're going to go into art." You know, all the art teachers, all my family members, and yeah,
So where'd you end up in college?
University of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did my undergraduate here in Johnstown and my graduate work in Pitt, Maine.
Sure. Great.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a good story. Thank you.
All right, Pastor, you're up. You
My story. My
well,
story.
and your career was in a totally different realm, wasn't it?
Yeah. My story goes back to, I'm a Johnstowner. I was born and raised in Johnstown. I live in the same house I grew up in. I bought it off my mother. I've been living back in there. I was only out of the city long enough to join the Air Force and put my time in the military and things like that. But I'm a Johnstowner. I love this city.
Okay.
When I got out of the service, I thought I had a calling into ministry at a younger age, and I believe I got some bad advice. So I ended up in the service. I came out with an electronics degree. I got a job in electronics, and for 30 years I worked for Kodak in their service department, fixing things for Kodak. And about the age of 52, about the age of 45, I really started taking my faith serious. I was always a follower of Jesus Christ, but
Did anything happen in particular?
my sons actually got on. They joined a youth group, and they got on fire for the Lord, and it affected our whole family.
Okay.
And I ended up relearning my faith and taking my faith serious. And about the age of 52, I heard God say, "Time to quit your job and become a pastor."
That's got to be. What was the family saying at this moment? Like, Dad, what are you doing?
My sons were like, "We knew that all along."
Okay.
They said that, they were sure of it all along. My wife, we prayed about it a lot, but then she was 100% in. And most of my family said, "You're crazy."
Of course.
Did it make a substantial change in your lifestyle?
Oh yeah, everything.
Because you didn't, as a minister, you're not going to have necessarily the perks that you would have working in private industry. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah. I gave up benefits, all those things.
Yeah, so you had to give up a lot.
financially.
Yeah.
But it never seemed like we gave up anything. It has just been I loved my job. I was good at my job. I was one of the higher ranked men in our service department. I was good at it.
Did they try to talk you out of it when you said you were leaving?
When the first time I called, my boss said, "I'm not letting you go. You're not going to." But he was a Christian too. And so when I started talking to him and said, "Hey, you're standing in the way of God here. You called me to do this." He called me back about 3 days later and said, "I prayed about it all day Sunday at church." He says, "And if you want to go, I'll sign the paperwork." And so he let me go. And I thought I was going to end up as a small rural country church pastor, not having the seminary degrees and all that. I've since gone to school and things like that, but I just thought I would get a small church. And that's where I started out in the Strongstown area. I was out there about 6 months helping out another pastor. And I got a call for Franklin Street in downtown Johnstown. And I said, I think that's a mistake. And they said, no, we're pretty sure you're the guy for this job. And I went down and met the people. And I've been there ever since.
When was that?
11 years ago. I think it was 2014,
Okay.
2013. Yeah, something like that.
That's almost the time I came here. I came here in 12.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that I wanted, and I'm sorry, I don't mean it. Do you have
No,
more of
no,
your
we're
story?
good.
Or
No,
are we,
no,
are
no,
we
we're
caught
good.
up here? We're,
No,
you remember
no,
what's my line? I'm supposed to try to get. I would never, if you would have just told me everything about the calling, I would not have been able to guess you were a minister. I think I'd have got you as a counselor, just listening to you, or something in that neighborhood. But I'm sorry, Terry, you just didn't. Which I guess that's not a bad thing, though, is it?
I don't think so. No. I think the one lesson I've learned is if God calls you to something, He's going to equip you and He's going to take care of you every step of the way. And
I like
I can't help but say that He has been faithful every step of the way.
Before we start talking about the program, and we'll talk some more about Terry's church and that whole effort, when Father Mark first told me about this, and I started thinking about it, and I, as a cradle Catholic, I can remember a time not that long ago that this never would have happened. That two members of my church would have sat down and figuratively broke bread with two people from another religion, not religion, you're Christian, but another church. It just wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that was a good thing, but that was the way it was for a long time. So do you both think it's significant that we can sit at the same table and talk about things?
Oh yeah. This is my son. My oldest son is a pastor in Johnstown, and I worked a lot with him. And we worked with a ministry called Greater Things. And Greater Things vision came from my son, who looked at all of the division in Johnstown and said, "This is crazy. We need to be working together." And so for the last 4 or 5 years, his whole mission, besides doing other things, has been to get churches working together. And we're seeing the fruits of that. We're seeing a revival starting to happen in the churches in Johnstown, and we're seeing miracles happen because of it. So yeah,
You know, it's funny. There's not an ecumenical or a group. What do you call those groups? You know, that we all get together for whatever we do, ministerial things. And you sit around and talk about the most boring of topics, you know, and do all that stuff. This is much more charismatic in the sense that it's not institutionalized anyway. Josh just gets these people together to do all these different things, and people are together. Someone said, "Is there a ministerial a group or something in Johnson?" I said, "I don't know, but if you go Wednesday afternoon at noon to this certain place, you'll find a bunch of people there that will pray with you." So it's much more informal, but I think he's done an awesome job with all that.
Cheryl,
I think it's very significant because I really believe that God brought me to United Methodist Human Services. We've since changed the name at the right time, because it has been on my heart that our need to, as the body of Christ, work together and be joined together in efforts in our in the way we do community, in all of it, that it needs to move ahead. Denominations are important. They're useful. We all have our desire, the way we like to worship and the way we, what's meaningful in our relationship with God and how we do our religion. And that's not, we don't need to change that, but we need to change how we work together.
do you think it's fair, though, as I said in the beginning, that not that many years ago, this
Absolutely.
would never have happened? It's just,
Absolutely.
and I think, honestly, I think that was more on us than it
Oh,
was on you. Because we just weren't allowed. I mean, and I don't know that we're still allowed, to be honest with you, but we get beyond that.
It's kind of funny. We invited Chris and Josh to come about New Day.
Yeah,
And the first time Chris says, "What do you want from us?" Anyway?
exactly. There was that
A little nervous
apprehension.
about the whole thing.
Sure,
What do you want?
sure.
It's nothing. No, we just want to talk about New Day here with all this.
Right.
So,
I mean, it wasn't. There was no other agenda. But I think it's great that we can do these kinds of things. And I know there are going to be people on both sides that are going to say, "Well, what are you talking to them for?" Well, okay, I'm sorry if you really don't understand it. We'll pray for you, but you'll just go and do whatever it is that you're going to do.
Right.
One thing I want to talk about, we talked about poverty, and you're talking about, and it's been referenced a lot, the city of Johnstown. Are you limited to the zip code of 15901, or is it, sometimes I think we talk about poverty, and it's only the poverty in downtown. Well, there's poverty throughout the whole area. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
So how broad is the reach, I guess? Or how
it
deep is the
depends
problem?
on parts of the program, but
Well,
I mean, the
no,
problem
let's
is
talk about poverty. How
maybe
deep
about-
is poverty's reach? Is there
Um,
sociological things or barriers, or
oh.
does it go? Does that make sense? I mean,
It does. I mean, I think one of the things we teach in our Bridges to Success program is that we need to see things through the lens of economic class, and that when a person has been raised in a different class, basically economic class,
right.
then they've learned a culture that maybe doesn't translate into the other classes. And so one of the things we're doing in our job readiness and workplace stability is trying to help translate those things across middle class, especially middle class, helping middle class businesses understand the culture of economic instability.
yeah, a lot of people think it's where you live depends on will determine
Oh,
what you are. No,
Absolutely
it
not.
has nothing to do with
Absolutely
that,
not.
does it?
Yeah, no, it really doesn't.
You've probably seen that more than anything. I mean, just because you live at a certain address doesn't mean that you're not, or that you're super wealthy, or that you're not struggling, right?
Right, right. It doesn't, in Johnstown especially, it doesn't matter where, East Hills, West Hills,
Right.
downtown,
Westmont.
each of them has their own struggles. Some of them, the struggle is a little bit different, but it's still a struggle. And so that's part of what Bridges is trying to bridge that gap between them and trying to help people out in all these different
I
situations.
saw you making
yeah.
notes. Do you are you
Yeah. Well, no, but I eventually I wanted to ask. Are the poor getting poorer, and are the rich getting richer?
Nationally, yes. Yeah.
What about
I mean,
here?
there's definitely information that shows that there's a widening gap between the top percentages to the lower percentage, and the middle class is getting is shrinking.
And in the lower class is getting larger.
Yes.
What is the deepest causes for poverty today?
Throw us some difficult questions, why don't you?
and you see you thought that
Yeah.
would come from me.
I can give a spiritual answer
You go anyone you want
or
to.
a social work answer.
You both.
Sure. I mean, spiritual answer, I really think we have forgotten how to be a community, and how in community, in the body of Christ, we are to love our neighbors. We're to support and surround the marginalized. In the Bible, when the people of Israel, even when they traveled through the desert, in the coming from the Exodus story, they kept the most vulnerable in the middle. They didn't
Isn't,
let them
I didn't
lag
know
behind.
that.
Yeah,
I never heard that. Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
That's Bema podcast with Norm.
Oh, Bama. Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah. So some of the
I've read Solomon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So some of the things they did,
Yeah.
really tried to help take care of. And a lot of times in the gospel or in a biblical look nowadays, anyway, we tend to focus on immorality and idolatry, and we forget social justice. But that is just as predominant in the scriptures.
Absolutely. I forget what
morality.
percentage of
Yeah.
the scriptures are about social justice. So you're saying in many ways we churches are becoming a bunch of culture warriors about a certain issues, and we're forgetting a vast majority of people are suffering a great deal.
Yeah, maybe forgetting why we're the body of Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I wonder if you see it this way. Like we have a phenomenal assistance ministry in this parish,
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're aware.
and the work that they do. But I notice sometimes is it once a month that you do a second collection for them, and I just wonder, like I always, whatever I got in my, and I'm not. It's not about bragging, but just saying I want to give to that, and I wonder how many people think, well, if I throw a 20 in that basket, that's it. I've done my job, and I don't have. Do you think that's a focus of maybe, or not a focus on where we should be thinking? Like you just can't throw money at it and it'll get better. Is that a fair?
That is a fair statement.
And I think that's where Bridges got its beginning at. We had been throwing money through human services at this problem for many, many years, from the 77 flood on, and we weren't getting anywhere. And finally, somebody came. We started reading through this Bridges program, And the point of this is to talk to the people, find out their story, find out how they ended up in poverty, and then how can we walk them out of poverty. And that's where Cheryl comes in with Bridges, with classes, with
Maybe we should talk a little bit more specifically about Bridges.
you know,
What do you?
because the stories, if you don't have the story, then it's easy to think, we'll just throw some money their way and they'll take care of it. But once you hear the story, you realize there's so much more to this than money's ever.
Well, there's your setup,
Yeah.
Cheryl. Tell us the story of Bridges.
Well, Bridges to Success started really before I came. I think it was Kara Ketley was the executive director then, and then Joey Baker. They really had the vision for trying to find a process that would help people create their own pathway toward stability out of poverty. And so they kind of latched on to the Bridges Out of Poverty initiative that Goodwill was kind of initiated, and they hung on to that just for a little bit. They really didn't do a whole lot with it, but United Methodist Human Services picked that up and said, "This is valuable. This is something that could really help change the trajectory for people and for our community." So Bridges to Success it's the introductory course is called Getting Ahead and Just Getting By World. And basically it's a study of poverty on an individual and a community level. It's not here's what you need to do to fix your life. It's not telling people this is how you get out of poverty. It's helping them examine for themselves, where am I at in my life? And then where do I want to be? And so they look at basically 11 resources that a stable person, a person who is especially economically stable and able to function and maybe.
Could you
or
name
the
a few
way
of
we
those?
think of.
Can you name a few of those 11?
Integrity, motivation, finances, spiritual health, emotional health, mental health, of course, physical health. I mean, we literally have had people that have lost hundreds of pounds because they've realized, hey, I need to get this under control in my life. And so, poverty, it looks at, in a sense, poverty in a lot of different realms, whether it's our spiritual poverty or our physical health poverty or our relationship poverty.
Can I stop you there? Define the word poverty for me. Because
Poverty
it's,
is
it's a broad,
Sure.
broad term.
The extent to which a person does without resources is a great basic way to define
You
poverty.
don't measure it by income or,
No.
I mean, the government does. The government says
Right,
that a
right.
family of 4 under this is considered
Yeah.
in poverty.
Right.
Is that a realistic number?
Right. No. That's a very unrealistic number. Yeah. No, I mean, for the purposes of our program, though, we want people to become healthy and whole, not just make a buck or get a job. I mean, we know a lot of people that probably have jobs that aren't very healthy and whole still. And so, we want them to be able to access resources and skills that are going to help them develop, a thriving life for themselves. So it's Bridges Out of Poverty that defines it as the extent to which a person does without resources. So that could be, a woman that's in a domestic violent situation. She's doing without a lot of resources. She's not thriving in her life.
Right.
It could be a person who is so overweight or so sick physically that they haven't, taken advantage of or taken care of themselves, and they need to learn how to do that. So,
All right. Jerry watches what folks are saying, and he was waving at me. So
Yeah,
Jerry,
I
what do
have
you
a
got?
question while we're in this topic. And the question is, how can I sign up for classes? You're talking about these classes. Or
okay.
What
Well,
website?
we do qualify that the person needs to be 175% of the poverty level or below that. So we try to target our efforts to folks who are in economic instability. But we also know that there's a lot of coexisting problems for people who live in poverty. That can be mental health, it could be drug and alcohol, it can be domestic violence. There's lots of other things that can be happening. And so they just need to call down our office. We'll get them signed up.
You interviewed them then.
Yes, we go through an application process, really look at where they're at in their lives. There's times where, people will be coming out of incarceration or they'll be coming out of treatment, and they're really not ready for this. This is a 16-week study, 3 hours an evening, for 3 hours a night. They
And this
have a
is
meal together.
Yeah, this is
Once a week? Once a week?
Once a week?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this isn't something about, oh, I can go down there, I can sign up for this, I'll get
No.
3 squares a day and all of that.
No.
There's got to be a commitment
Absolutely.
on your part, right?
It's a big commitment, and yeah, some of the folks that have gone through it, it amazes me. We actually give a stipend to help a person be in the program, so they're basically being paid a minimum $10 an hour kind of wage to participate in a class to teach themselves, right? For this particular course. And it gives them a little bit of food money, it's a Walmart gift card. So, but more often than not, people would continue it and would have told us they would have continued it if they had never even gotten the stipend.
you
Very
find-
few are only there for the stipend.
You find these are people, though, is it tough for them to come forward?
Mm-hmm.
My
Absolutely.
mother, I remember my mother telling me all the time, and my mom in the last years of her life, she didn't make any money. I kept saying to her, I said, Mom, you qualify for food stamps. No, there are other people that need it more than I do. And I'd go, Mom, trust me, I'd see what she was eating or what she wasn't eating. And I said, you qualify. You should. That's what it's there for. Nope. I am. And that was the way she was raised.
Yep.
That goes to the poor. And I said, well, you're poor. You don't want to admit it, but you are. And this is so. Is there a stigma attached to all this, or people?
Yeah, absolutely.
So is it hard for them to get involved, or are they gotten to a point where they say, you know what,
Yeah.
I have tried and I can't do this?
I mean, I think our approach makes it much more approachable because we're not there teaching them or telling them this is what you need to fix in your life. The people that facilitate the classes are graduates of the program, so that they have
Wow.
lived it
yeah,
themselves.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So they approach it from, and it's really learning around a table together. Nobody is lecturing. Nobody is telling you what you ought to do. I mean, you might look at somebody and say, well, that's obvious what they needed to work on. But that doesn't mean that's what they have the capacity to work on at the time.
Terry, is it difficult to see the role of the church in this? Because she's talking about it's basically a social program. I mean, let's be honest. But your perspective would be a little different. Is it easy for the church to get involved, or difficult, or how do you see that?
No, from my perspective, it's easy. I believe the gospel. When you truly understand the gospel of Jesus Christ, he says, love your neighbor.
Right.
And loving your neighbor consists of learning their story, where they're at, where they're living, and then trying to encourage them, trying to lift them up out of where, if they're down in that pit, lifting them up and bringing them up out of it. And Bridges, I think, does that. And everything in there, we're not necessarily pushing the gospel, but everything in there is based on gospel principles. So I think it's easy for the church to be, we want Bridges to be part of the church. We want them to be located in the
Do
church.
your congregants agree with that?
Oh, we are. The church has backed Bridges ever from the day that they moved in. They were part of a Bridges way back when it started. Was started by Mary Jane Fuge, who came out of Franklin Street Church, and she started it after the flood, and they backed it, and now it's grown into this. They were in offices in another building and had problems with those offices. And we had empty offices. And right away, we just said, hey, you guys need to move in here. And they've been there ever since and growing and working. And
Father brought this up in Mass this morning. We talk about homelessness. And I think homelessness, a lot of times we see them on TV, these street people that are living in the major cities and they have tents set up, and you're gonna say, well, I drive around downtown Johnstown, or I drive around here and I don't see tents. There must not be a homeless problem here, but there is. And you also talked about secondary homelessness, and he asked in church this morning, do you know what that means? And I was sitting there going, I don't have a clue.
You know who shook her head this one was Amy Bradley. She shook her head.
Because she was, so
yeah.
tell us that homelessness, secondary homelessness, same, different.
Our predominant problem is secondary homelessness because we have a lot of people that are just living from place to place. They might be able to stay somewhere for 2 weeks, and then they take their whole family and have to go somewhere else. So they're living on couches basically, or sharing space with other people. We don't have a whole lot of, we do have some predominant, homelessness where people are actually living on the streets, but definitely our biggest problem is secondary.
I was talking to somebody the other day. I was telling them about what we were doing here tonight, and she was saying that she knew somebody who worked at a rental place, And a lot of people who are very poor, they're Christmas shopping, they'll go rent something. And when they go rent it, like for example, imagine that they go rent a bed for their children for Christmas. Santa Claus brought you a bed. Isn't that great? Then the rented place has to come eventually because they can't pay for it anymore and take the bed. So the little kids are wondering, wait a minute, who are you? And why are you taking the bed Santa gave me? And these people are just, I mean, the people that do this job are like, oh my, I mean, it just crushes them to have these little kids with these wide eyes looking at them and wondering, why am I losing my bed? What happened to Santa? And so it's almost like, I can't imagine, I can imagine the trauma of that. And there's a poverty I don't know. That's a real poverty though, to do that.
You think most people don't realize the state of poverty in terms of, or as you say, secondary homelessness? Like I've never heard it before.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that there are a lot of other people who have not heard
I had not heard it until we talked
How
the
big
other
of
day.
an issue is, and there's really no fix for that though, is there? From what I'm
Well,
hearing,
I mean, viable employment is a
Yeah.
fix. You know, having a living wage and being able to be employed and housing that is affordable. You know, those are, and that is kind of a problem in our area now. Right now is our housing crisis. The prices of rental, the struggles with Johnstown Housing Authority. You know, with them having to close some things, and it's complicated. And you know, and people tell you, and with the transient population that's been coming through, whether it's from Philadelphia or New York, but. Yeah, I don't know if I can't answer that fully myself.
Terry,
but-
you were about to jump in,
important.
so
But one of the things that amazes me though about when I see some of the secondary homelessness, and Cheryl's talking about people that they'll live with somebody for 2 weeks and then they're someplace else for a couple of weeks.
Mhm.
The person they're living with doesn't have anything to begin with either, and that is sort of
Exactly
the amazing part of this is where there was a lot of people in Johnstown who were struggling to get by day to day, but they open their doors up with somebody else in this exact same. And all they really do in a lot of cases, is they create more problems for themselves.
well, they're kicking the can down the road too, right? I mean, they're not.
They live day to day in
Right.
many ways.
It's all day to day living, but their hearts are where sometimes I think the heart of the church should be. You know, they're willing. They have nothing, but they're still willing to give what little they have to somebody who's even in worse shape than they're in. And so many times I look at that and think, man, if we could have that heart in the church, and that's where I think we struggle.
You know, at the 11 o'clock mass, I just risked it. And we were talking about getting Thanksgiving dinners for folks. And I mentioned that one person said to me, oh, don't give me a dinner because I don't have an oven to cook it in. You know, so 2 people came up to me after mass and said, I'll buy her an oven. I'll buy her an oven. It's like, really? And so I happened to call the person on the phone and says, hey, I can get you an oven. Okay, my oven is a Westinghouse. Now, as you know, Westinghouse went out of business.
Yeah, they've not been making manufacturing.
And so it's also an issue of electricity because everything is so out of date that everything. So that's part of the problem too. It's not like just getting a new oven, getting the specs and pushing it in there. It's
Now, how about that though? Because this program that he's talking about, we have this, you know, we sponsor, I think it's $25 is what we contribute, and about what are we calling it? A
a
Thanksgiving
Thanksgiving dinner basket. There's
Dinner
tons of
basket.
stuff. Yeah, and the McEnany's are the ones that put this thing together. I think that's
Yeah, I
right,
think
Jerry.
they're
isn't
up
it?
with
Yeah, the
that.
McEnany's put it all together
So,
for us.
you know, we're talking about serving a family of 4. So we're contributing, and there's an example of somebody who would love to have the dinner but doesn't have any way to cook it.
Exactly.
And I think there are a lot of people who don't have ovens.
Yeah.
Okay, if I can use that
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
They don't have ovens. And so they might be willing to take your help, but they what are they going to do with it?
Yeah.
You know, they'll take it, but they don't know what they're going to do with it.
Exactly. So the reason I brought it up, I said, well, maybe somebody can cook it for you. And that's whenever the 2 people walk up to me and says, I'll get her an oven. You know, so, but that's kind of the poverty she's trying to struggle through without it, you know.
And that sometimes can create. Well, I'm going to step into the deep end.
Go ahead.
Believe me, we've been
you know,
in the deep end
sometimes
a lot in this program.
we create another problem, or we create a bigger problem when what we're trying to do is just solve it for somebody else.
Yeah.
Rather than really discussing, how can we be helpful? How can we really be useful to you, be helpful to you, not just here's what I think you need.
Is that is what you meant by toxic?
It is, yeah.
Toxic charity.
That can,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was just
that can
getting tell us
become,
what toxic charity
Yeah.
is.
can become toxic charity.
What is toxic
Toxic charity is when it's basically unexamined charity. And so charity that thinks it's doing something helpful, but in reality, it's maybe doing more harm than good. And sometimes our approach to just giving to a resource to somebody can be just that, because it's not taking into account. Well, I'll use a little story from the book, actually, Toxic Charity, where they talk about a mission that wanted to get blankets to kids in a third world country. Because somebody was there, saw that the moms didn't have any blankets for their little babies, and they had them in rags and all of these things. And so they were on a mission trip, took a bunch of blankets over for children. And within a week, they noticed nobody had the blankets anymore. They were all gone, and the mothers had their babies wrapped in their rags again. And so they started asking questions. What is going on here? What they found out was, well, it was nice to get blankets, but what they needed was food. And so they sold the blankets to get food, at least for a short time. And so, it's like,
Wow, wait. I mean, yeah, that's kind of swing and a miss.
yeah. But a lot of times we see something and we want to feel good about helping that. And so we jump ahead and do what we're comfortable
Well,
with.
good. And then you're saying to me that what needs to happen is you got to go see that person and sit down and say, what do you need here?
Yeah.
As opposed to us predetermining.
And to me, that's what community is. That is what the body of Christ is. And to kind of circle back to what you said, Marty, I really don't see us just as a social service. We are not. We are a ministry, and we are supposed to be a mission of the church, of the Big C Church, the body of Christ in our community. We want to be a resource to churches to help them do a better job at all of this, and to be a resource to teach and to equip.
Could I ask you, Cheryl, if you would just sort of, this is not on the script with all this, or in Terry too. Here we are, our Mother Sorrows. Okay. How could we be part of what you do in a way that you can envision this community somehow being a part of this in a way that's healthy for everybody?
Yeah.
Terry, you want to take the first swing at that?
Well, I mean, for Bridges, Cheryl can handle that part of it. They need teachers. They need help with the classes. They need volunteers. You can get involved with things like that. Part of what Josh does, we do a community dinner on Thursday night, and we feed anywhere from 35 to 55 people. But the whole point is they come in, we do a 10-minute to 15-minute devotion. So we're not feeding their belly, we're feeding their souls first. And then they get a meal out of it. And I know one of the small groups from Omos participates in helping out with that.
Sure. Yeah, Doug. I don't know what Doug's group. I don't know which one that is. But anyway, Doug Puchko's.
Doug Puchko's group, and they do an amazing job. And so we can always use more help with that meal, because it's every Thursday night. We can do things like that.
Where do the people who come for the meal come from? And how do they find out about the meal? I mean, it's not like you got a neon sign outside the church.
Maybe they do. I don't know.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Well,
you-
there's a and again, it's once you learn how the people of the town work with especially with poverty, there's this sort of underground railroad that is just telling people what's going on, and the word gets out. So most of ours, we thought we were going to do it for the homeless. What we ended up finding out was, we get a few homeless, but we get a whole lot more lonely and broken people downtown. And so when they come, this has become their church. Even to the point that Josh, we did a picnic for them. We did a church picnic. They don't go to church anyplace else, but they show up on Thursday night for a meal. They get their small group devotion as the,
What's a small group thing? Oh.
Well, it's a small group of 35. Yeah.
Oh.
You know, so it's a but
It's a mini
but-
church.
but-
Yeah, it's a large small group.
yeah,
Okay.
It's a mini church, but you know, we once we recognize that this people, now we start looking at it as their church, and so we are intentional about talking to them and hearing their stories and how can and we've got some people that have signed up for the Bridges class because they started coming on Thursday night. We learned their story and found out they would be a good candidate for this. They talked to Cheryl. Cheryl got them signed up, and now they're on. You know, they're learning how to take better account of their life. I think a lot of times. You know?
Well, let's talk in the little time we have left, and we have about 18 minutes. Tell us about what you call a cohort, about this structured program that Bridges is.
Okay.
I mean, you've kind of mentioned it a
Yeah,
little bit,
yeah.
touched on it. Give us a here's what it is and here's how it works if
Okay.
you're interested. Then.
Well, I mean, if somebody's interested in participating in Bridges to Success, then generally you enter through doing a Getting Ahead cohort, which is the 16-week study of poverty on an individual and a community level. We're basically come together, sit around a table, and go through a lot of material. It's part
So
of
if I want to do this, I have to be classified somewhere in the poverty.
Yeah, you would be, although we definitely have had people that audit it and go through it, and we actually recommend that. And one of the questions Mark had, or Father Mark had, if you getting involved might look like you know some people in your church that could really benefit from it, and so you say, let's go down and do this together. And so you go through a cohort with some people that are in your own community that, or we, can maybe bring a cohort up to another, to another place. Right now we're lining it up, hopefully with the YMCA and Flood City Youth Academy for this next round of classes. And then after you've done a cohort, it opens up ongoing classes, so an ongoing enrichment. So one of our biggest is Bridges Financial Management. It works with actually AmeriServe Church was one of our churches the last time. First Summit has done it with us, or I'm sorry, Banks has done it with us.
Well, how do I get
USSCO.
I like what I'm hearing tonight. I want to get involved in this. Let's start there. What's the first step there?
Either just come down to the office or call
the
call
office
down to
is
the
where?
office down at Franklin Street.
It is
Church.
at the church?
Yes.
Okay, so
It
it's that
is.
simple.
It is,
Maybe okay, there's your
phone.
website up there.
Okay.
BridgesCM.org.
Yep, bridgescm.org.
Okay.
Is there a phone number we could put up there?
There is 814-539-2633.
That's
Steve, is that going to be challenging?
looking for a pencil over
Putting
there.
that up. Put it on quick.
In the- yeah, it won't
Okay,
be
all right,
now.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine.
because that's too difficult for him to do right.
814-539-2633.
So I want to avail myself of this. So
So you would get it. Yeah,
Take
you would
me.
contact us. We get you an application. So it's a application to really assess where a person's at in their journey.
okay, I can't read or write. What are you going to do with that?
We'll walk
application?
through it with them.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've
That happen
done
much?
for a number of people.
You
Yeah,
have? Okay.
handful of times, yeah. And then there's an interview based on the application. We look at what's all going on in their lives. Like I said, there's times where somebody's, just coming out of treatment, or they're just coming out of incarceration, or they are homeless. Although we've had people that are homeless that have taken it, and that's not a problem. But there has to be a certain level of stability that it seems like they'll be able to accomplish it or get through the class.
Is it difficult for those people to come forward?
It can be, yeah. It can be.
I mean, are they?
To admit that you need help in general, like you
Oh yeah,
said about
yeah.
your mom.
That's what I was. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
usually drives them to come?
Yeah. Usually it's because they've asked for help in some other way. So they might have been to our food pantry, or they might have come to get diapers in the office, or they've asked about
that makes
emergency
sense.
financial assistance.
Okay.
There's always going to be a need to
And
develop to give
Thursday
resources.
evening too?
Yeah, they might have been a Thursday evening.
Yeah.
Sure. And they start to get around maybe the people, and we, and actually our biggest source of referrals are graduates of the program. So,
And this is you got to make a commitment.
Mhm.
I mean, this isn't, I come in and I meet with you and then you give me a meal and I say everything is fine and maybe you'll give me a gift card and I'll just move on. It's
Yeah.
not, that's not what it is.
No.
This is
It
a
is
two-way street.
Walking with people through a process of change, a
I'm
journey.
sure some folks come in trying to work the system in some fashion.
There's always going to be that, but that is truly the exception to the
Okay.
rule. It really is.
I mentioned at Mass this morning that we were going to talk about what you mentioned, toxic charity. And after Mass, one of the persons came up to me and says, I am guilty of that. And he told a story of where he was in Nashville. And apparently in Nashville, never been there, there's a lot of street musicians all around. And so this guy was sitting there playing and he, the person said, can I play a song for you? And the person that was talking to me said, here's $5. I don't need you to sing a song for me. And the man, so I says, you can keep your $5. I just wanted to hear you. I just wanted you to hear me play. And he says he has felt guilty about that ever since.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ever since. That would be an example of toxic charity.
Yeah. That's a great example of the dynamic that we tend to think of in charity, that it's a
Yeah.
one-way thing. Charity done well should be a two-way street. We should be receiving and being benefited in a sense by those we help just as much as we're benefiting them. And so that means allowing
Greg
them
Boyle
to
would
be
say
in our
that.
lives.
Greg Boyle said that. Greg Boyle worked with gang members in L.A., but he's
Okay.
a pre-Jesuit.
Yeah,
but,
he's a Jesuit
He's a
priest.
character. Oh my gosh!
Read
But
his
anyway,
book,
he
yeah.
would say that all the time. Two-way street.
Yeah.
Two-way street.
So, how big is the organization? I assume that you're an employee, and do
Yeah.
you have paid staff, or how
I
do you?
am the only full-time employee, and we
So-
have two others that are part-time.
And how do you sustain yourself?
Well, we're definitely in a growing phase, so it's been a struggle recently. But because I think we've hit a tipping point. We have 145 graduates of the program
These are people
So-
that have gone through.
that have been through a cohort and are continue to work on themselves, work on their
Okay.
own goals. Now, 145 is it's 86% of the people who start. So I can't remember the math on that, but 86% of the people who start a cohort complete it, which is impressive, very impressive. I think it's impressive for any church member to do that, and for somebody who lives in daily instability, that's extremely impressive. And that includes people during the pandemic who did some of these on their phones, sitting in a McDonald's parking lot to get Wi-Fi because they didn't have their computer at home. They didn't have internet. Anyway,
So it's
How
not.
many volunteers you have?
Yeah.
we have a group of leadership from who are graduates of the program. Or
That's, I
graduates
think,
of
was
Beginning
you've said
Ahead.
that a few times
15
now. They
people.
come back.
Oh, yes. And they sew back into. We have 5 that are certified facilitators for Getting Ahead cohorts. And that's certified through the Getting Ahead Network, which is a national network that uses this kind of material, bridges out of poverty and getting ahead in a just getting by world.
Jerry.
2 questions. Actually, when we go back and way back, someone asked, "Does Bridges meet on Wednesdays in the park?" Is that something you guys do?
That's not
I
Bridge.
know is
That would have
somebody
been your thing on Sunday in the afternoons.
Wednesdays in the
Music?
park. That was the question, but I don't know.
No.
Okay. Here's a deeper question. How can we be in communion with the poor?
I think we each have to be able to examine ourselves humbly on what does our network of people around us really look like? And are we looking at them as these are the people I help versus these are my friends? I think that we may need to see ourselves a little differently and see people a little differently, so that we can recognize they're just as valuable. They have just as much to contribute to us and to the world around us, even if they don't look like us.
When you graduate
Mm-hmm.
a cohort,
Yes.
describe that person.
Well, we always do a little graduation. ceremony.
Okay.
So it's always very nice. And then I started to say they can then access now other portions of the program. One of the things we know that happens when somebody's trying to walk out of poverty is you hit cliffs, you hit obstacles
Sure.
that make it very hard. And so we have supportive assistance. We'll help with, any reasonable need. We even have a vehicle matching grant process where a person saves up some money. We'll match that up to $2,500. And so we've had, I think, 9 graduates who have been able to avail themselves of that, which means somebody who's living, very close to the poverty line and yet still learning to put a little back, be able to work towards that. And that's huge.
Do you think the people who come through the program are different than the people who enter the program? The people who leave the program are different than the people who enter?
Meaning
Are they
people that
different?
don't
Are they
complete it?
No, I'm talking about a person. I get in it and I stay through it
Mm-hmm.
and I graduate. How different
Absolutely.
am I from the person who walked in to the person who walks
It's
out?
an individual process, obviously, but everybody sets 3 goals for themselves in the midst of that class, or those 16 weeks. And so they discover, what does my story look like when I started? And then at the end, they write for themselves what my future story will be. And so they begin to see themselves differently and see that there could be possibilities. And we do have dozens and dozens of examples of changed lives of people,
Could we invite you back sometime and you can share some? Remember, we talked
sure,
about
we
that
can
a little
bring a
bit.
few along.
Yeah, we talked
Yeah.
last time about bringing someone else along, and you said, "Well, it might be a little tough in 2 days or something, like 3
yeah,
days,
yeah.
something."
Terry, where does Jesus fit into all this?
Oh, I think Jesus, like I said, these are all spiritually based programs. And when Christ comes into a person's life, he gives them hope. And I think that's for a lot of the people that Cheryl and I are working with. That they come in broken and a lot without that hope. But when they learn that God's got a plan for their life, and they can start working with God in partnership with God, we start seeing that change in their life.
Do you
that
get people who
hope.
come in and go, "Oh yeah, you're going to tell me I got to pray"? You know how long I've been praying and nobody's listening, and this isn't working, or
No, and I think the one thing we Cheryl, when we started this, and Cheryl can add to this, but when we started, it was the 16-week program, and they would graduate, and then real quickly we realized, okay, now we just started them. Now we got to put the second program in. Now we're starting into a job readiness program,
That's how it works.
working with businesses in town, because now once you start changing a person and start giving them hope, now they're coming back to you and saying, "Hey, I can start doing this." But now they haven't been taught. So now how do we teach them to do it? And so that's where the second class comes in, the third class comes in, the fourth. It's a process that just keeps playing out.
people that are watching tonight who want to get involved in this, and maybe it's just they want to throw money in a basket. I mean, you're not going to turn down money if somebody wants to throw it your way.
Absolutely.
But well, how can they, and what should they do, and how would they approach that?
Well, I mean, it depends on where they want to get involved. I mean, we definitely need.
Where do
for-
you need
for
the
our
help?
classes,
Where do you want them to get involved?
we need people to make meals for these classes because we do provide a meal. We
Okay.
provide
Do that.
childcare when there's families that have kids that need childcare during the classes.
So you'll take volunteers,
Sure,
and they,
Every Tuesday, the food pantry needs volunteers to help get the food to the people. Every Tuesday, we do a clothing ministry. We need volunteers to help get. I've been amazed by how many people come to Johnstown with no clothes. They come with nothing on their back, and so the clothing ministry is able to help them out. So we can use volunteers in that. I have to tell you that we're doing a fundraising banquet this Thursday at the Holiday Inn. If somebody would like to come and learn more about it and have a free meal, we're going to ask you to write a check at the end of the meal.
Good.
But if somebody would like to, because we
I'm supposed to be at a
growing.
class on Thursday. What time's your thing start? What time's your thing start?
6 o'clock. 6 o'clock at the Holiday Inn. Yeah,
But
6
if a
o'clock
bunch
at
of
the
you
Holiday
talk me into it and will come with me, I will consider going to that. So
but I mean, it's not like you're going to say we have enough volunteers or we have enough money.
No,
You're not going to get to that point. So literally, if someone watching tonight, or as this plays through the week, they just call the church.
there's a
our
number. They
number.
got the number.
phone
They have a
number
number
there.
on there. It's on there. Yeah.
Yep.
and what do they have to provide you? Or you just say, we want to help, and they'll say, fine,
Well, I
we'll
mean,
find a place for you?
there's certain parameters, like if they want to do childcare, we need to make sure we have the clearances and things like that. So maybe they already have them. That would be wonderful.
Where's your greatest need?
Probably funding right at the moment.
Right at the moment, yeah.
Just because we are committed to really investing in these folks. So to do a cohort, it's about $525 per person to go through the full 16 weeks.
Okay.
And
You
that
don't ask these
includes-
people to give you the 525
no,
because they don't have it.
No,
matter of
they
fact,
don't
you're
have it.
paying
No,
them.
we don't charge anything for the work that we do with folks.
But that's your cost. All your cost involved averages 525 per
Sure.
person.
Yep.
So if someone called you on the phone and said, "I have a check for $525,"
They'd be sponsoring a person to go
and you
through a
could
cohort.
do it that way.
Sure.
Or if you can't get that level, there aren't people that can write $525 checks.
Absolutely.
So at any level, you'd be able to take and that's simply
Absolutely.
call and we'll figure out a way. What's more important, that finance or the actual? And I know how important finance is, but you need boots on the ground. So
Boots
to
on the
speak.
ground, sure. And having people, like I said earlier, having people say, I do know some folks that maybe could really benefit from
Maybe
this.
she should come down and stop.
I want to go down with them. I want to
Okay.
go through a cohort with them. We're more than open to that. We've had a number of people audit the classes so that they could learn from it.
Okay, I'm not sure what's you guys are. I mean, we
We're,
can
we're
hear,
good. Somebody
sorry.
just said, "Please pray for me. Nothing's working for me."
and that's what when I said that before.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, you're going to pray for me because that's I've been doing that.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that type of a circumstance?
Yeah. Listen.
maybe she needs
Just
to
listen.
come and down and see what they got. If you want to
Yeah.
get help, there's a place to go.
Sure.
Do that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make that point. This isn't just a free meal. This isn't just fellowship. This is about changing a life. Is
And I
that
don't-
And the community at large, because if all we think is, it's the individual that has to change, and the community doesn't change, businesses,
See,
leadership,
this
if
is-
that doesn't happen, then it's not really complete. So
We have a long way to go to understand all this. You would think we'd have this poverty thing down by now, and we really don't. And I just think you guys do a great job because who else is doing this downtown right now? The way you guys are trying to do this in a much more comprehensive way. And as I listen, that social worker degree is critical because there's a way, Terry, you and I, we don't get that dimension as well. But we weren't trained in that,
yeah.
So, and I'm listening to you talk about that. I'm going, yeah, that's right. Duh, yeah, that's right. So I have a lot to learn myself.
And there's a lot of people. I'm telling you, I just have this feeling like if they were listening to this, and they go, yeah, okay, it's not. That doesn't impact me. I don't have that problem, and you don't realize how expansive it is because you don't see homeless people with tents and whatever sitting on your street, does it? Yeah, Jerry.
Yes. Is there, do you take clothing donations?
The church takes clothing donations. Yeah. If
Yeah.
you contact the church Monday through Thursday, 9 to 2, somebody can meet you at the door and we take clothing. Yeah. Every Tuesday we give
Good.
out free clothes. Clothing
Good.
Ministry. Yep.
Well, I, for one, am very thankful that you guys are around and doing what you're doing. And I'm really happy you left Kodak. I'm telling you.
Does Kodak exist anymore?
Oh, they're still hanging in there. Yeah. still-
Okay.
I
They just
think
don't
so.
make those little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we doing next week, by the way?
I knew you were going to ask that, and what's next week?
That's the, what,
November
12th?
12th. Oh, we're going back to the book, the new Nikki Gumbel book,
Yes.
and I'm trying to remember what it's called. Help me, Jerry.
The book doesn't matter, but
Yeah, we're going to talk about
How to find the secret of happiness.
and how to
Yeah.
change the world around. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
the secret of happiness.
Yeah, secret of happiness. What is the secret of happiness?
How to be rich and beautiful.
Well, okay,
kidding.
I'm going to fail on both. I'm going to fail.
Anyway, let's ask Cheryl what she thinks the secret of happiness. Maybe to serve other people.
I think what you guys, seriously, what you guys are doing, I applaud it. I admire you, and hopefully we can, because this isn't something that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people are going
Right.
to change.
Absolutely.
It took a lot to get us here. It's going to take a lot to
And
get.
I just Thursday night, Holiday Inn, you said starting at 6 o'clock, and the fundraiser for you that you would like to see. This is important to be able to get that. So I just want to do a shout out for that one, for Oaks, for doing that. And so thank you very much. And hopefully we'll be able to do something similar again.
Yeah,
Oh,
we'd like
yeah.
to see
That'd be
that.
nice.
Very much.
So thank you for taking the time to go do this with us.
Yep.
Thank you.
We're
No,
for
grateful.
having us.
We appreciate the partnership we've had with
Good.
our Mother of Sorrows ever since the Alpha program.
Yeah. Oh, we'll do that
and
again
all
too
the
sometime.
things. It just this is the church. This
Yeah,
is, this
yeah.
is the
I
church,
agree.
and this
I
is what
agree.
we love.
Absolutely. I know
So
St.
we
John's
appreciate that.
downtown is they're always supporting our pantry.
Oh, good.
Father Matt was over the other day. We were talking about the issues with social service in our area and
Good,
how we
because
need to- we
I'd
need to do it
love to
different.
see you and Father Matt and
Yeah.
Rick Messina get together, the deacon.
Yep.
I'd love to see that. That'd be great.
Guys, thank you. And you survived. See, I wasn't nothing.
It
Not
wasn't
too
that
bad.
That's good. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for watching us, and see you again next week.